Tonight, independent flip. Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema goes rogue, ditching the Democratic Party label. Plus, back to Earth. NASA's Artemis 1 mission nearing the end of a historic journey beyond the moon. And killer robots. No longer a notion found in science fiction. And why the Nativity?
Just when people needed hope, God would send a baby, a king.
A new docudrama answers some of the biggest questions surrounding the birth of Christ. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. An unrealized red wave today gives way to a blue betrayal with a Democratic defection. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation from our news bureau in Washington, D.C. I'm John Jessup. Well, tonight, the political reverberations of a shakeup on Capitol Hill are still being felt after Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema officially dropped ties to the Democratic Party. Long considered a centrist and key swing vote, she now identifies as an independent. Sinema arguing she's never neatly fit into a party box, nor does she want to. Telling CNN she believes many Americans tired of partisanship will identify with her move. Sinema has a long history of disagreeing with Democrats on key issues like higher taxes on businesses and changing the rules of the Senate filibuster to allow Democrats to proceed with their priorities. Her decision? Not likely, though, to change the balance of power in the new Senate, keeping Democrats in control. Well, here with us now is Julia Manchester, national politics reporter for The Hill. Julia, always great to have you. In response to the party defection, the White House put out a statement saying this: Sinema's decision to register as an independent in Arizona does not change the Democratic Party majority control of the Senate, adding, quote, "We have every reason to expect that we will continue to work successfully with her." Julia, does this switch make things harder for Democrats, and what does it effectively change in the tightly divided upper chamber?
Yeah, John, for now, it doesn't appear that it will make things necessarily harder because Kyrsten Sinema has signaled that she will keep her committee assignments. And what that means is that, with Raphael Warnock winning the 51st seat in the Senate for Democrats, getting that 51 majority, Democrats no longer have to have that power sharing agreement in the committees. Now, Democrats are officially the majority in the committee. So now that Kyrsten Sinema is saying, I'm going to keep my committee assignments, that doesn't change anything for Democrats. However, if we look at something like from an electoral standpoint, for example, in Arizona, the fact that she isn't running, or we don't know if she's running or not, but the fact that she's running as an independent could be running as an independent, could throw a curveball into that 2024 Senate bid. But quickly back to Capitol Hill, where it could get difficult for Democrats is when, her and oftentimes Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia are these deciding factor votes. They could swing one way or another, working between Democrats and Republicans. So that's where I could see it making an impact. But for now, it's not going to change the structural dynamic that's going to come into play once Democrats officially take their positions in the new Congress.
You had just mentioned West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin. Do you think we could see any other defections? Manchin has long been seen as a thorn in the side of the Democratic Party.
It's a good question, though it seems that now that the midterms are over, Manchin, is in a party that's in the majority right now and has a, the good majority in the Senate. There's no longer that power sharing agreement. I don't think Manchin is going to necessarily do that. Before, he would constantly talk about the reasoning behind him, sort of being a thorn in his party side, saying, look, we need to keep the majority. This is why I'm doing this. I'm trying to attract other voters. So I don't see him potentially doing this. That being said, though, West Virginia is a red state and he's a Democrat. So his reelection bid in 2024 is going to be, or could likely be, a tough one, assuming he runs.
Julia, speaking of 2024, in the few seconds we have left, a new poll shows Republicans now favor Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over former President Donald Trump as the 2024 nominee by 5 points, 47 to 42%. It's been a tough few weeks for Trump politically and legally. Do you see any way he can claw back his challenge to get back to the White House?
Look, it's always possible. We've seen Donald Trump do a lot of the impossible before, what we thought was the impossible. But I haven't seen so many Republicans publicly try to distance themselves from Trump since he really got into politics in 2015.
All right, Julia Manchester, national politics reporter at The Hill. Thank you so much, Julia, and have a great weekend.
You too.
Well, it is an interstellar dry run to return people to the moon. NASA's record-breaking Artemis 1 mission is set for a successful splashdown this Sunday. The conclusion of the mission beyond the moon and back sets the stage for future trips to the lunar surface. NASA's Orion spacecraft preparing for the final leg of its journey after flying thousands of miles beyond the moon. This weekend, the capsule is set to splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the California coast. The Artemis 1 mission does not include a crew, but it paves the way for humans to return to the moon in a new era of crewed missions and a long-term lunar presence. And with us now is Chris Hansen, Deputy Program Manager of NASA's Extravehicular Activity and Human Surface Mobility Program. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start off with what success looks like for this mission. How would you define that? And then secondly, are all systems ready for a successful splashdown this Sunday?
Yeah, for sure. So this first Artemis 1 mission was really about testing two different things. The SLS rocket, which is our big rocket, which we need to get the astronauts out of low Earth orbit, out to the moon and back safely. So that rocket performed, it aced its test, it's done its job. And now the second major component of that system is the Orion vehicle. And that's the vehicle that actually will hold the crew members, get them away from Earth and to the moon and back safely. And so really now the next major step of that is getting that vehicle back through Earth's atmosphere into the water and recovered safely. Now coming back from the moon takes a lot of energy, and so the heat shield bears the brunt of that. So the heat shield is very specially designed to take very high temperatures. So that's about, this weekend when we come back, that heat shield's about to get its big test. That's really the major thing we're looking for in that test. And then when we get the vehicle down on the ground, we'll look at it, we'll look at all the data, and we'll get a chance to see if we're ready to actually put people on that vehicle for the next mission.
Chris, how important is this Artemis mission in helping us or helping people get back to the moon? And what are some of the new things that we've learned in this mission?
Oh, it's incredibly important. This is the vehicle, what Artemis is about is human exploration, and this is the vehicle that will take humans from Earth to the moon. So these two building blocks are really, really important. I'll say one of the big differences between this mission and Apollo, when we visited Apollo, we stayed around the equator, and it was easier to get there. The environment there is a little less complicated, but it's also not as interesting to us scientifically. We want to go to the South Pole. And so this mission was testing out a lot of the systems. Can we get to the South Pole? Can we get in the orbits that we need? Can we live in the environments, the thermal environments that creates? And so this vehicle really is the first step in doing that. So it's really important to get this part right before we start testing the next parts of the system.
In the few seconds that we have left, you're well aware Artemis captured some stunning images of the moon over the past few weeks. As someone who's worked on this team, what do you think about some of the images that have been coming back to Earth?
Oh, we think it's really incredible. A reminder, last time we went to the moon was back in the early 70s. Most of us that work here at Johnson Space Center and NASA as an agency weren't alive back then. And so for us, this is our opportunity to really see these iconic images that we've been reading about in history books actually coming from the cameras and the systems that we built. So we are really, really excited to get back to the moon and really bring the rest of the world with us with these pictures that you mentioned.
We are excited as well. NASA's Chris Hansen at Houston's Johnson Space Center. Chris, thank you so much and best wishes.
Thanks.
Well, you may have seen them on TV or billboards or even while scrolling on your digital devices. Ads aimed at rebranding or reintroducing people to the person of Jesus. The He Gets Us campaign launched earlier this year with the goal of redeeming how people think about Jesus. Organizers behind the non-denominational effort point to studies that reflect negative perceptions of Christ based on Christian behavior rather than the biblical Jesus. Well, joining us now is one of the people involved in the campaign, Jason Vanderground, president of Haven Creative Marketing Hub. Jason, thanks for being with us. Before we get to any questions, what I'd like to do is play one of your ads for those who may not be familiar with them. Let's take a quick look.
There was this controversial figure. Everywhere he went, people challenged him. They questioned his ideology, trolled him, called him ugly names. But he never took the bait, never raised his voice, refused to retaliate, because he believed he could change the world by turning the other cheek.
Jason, you cover other themes like Jesus being a rebel, hosting a dinner party, or Jesus understanding the feeling of being alone. Who's the target of this campaign, and why now?
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. It's the target of the campaign is people who are spiritually open, but are very skeptical about Christianity. And the cool thing is they respect Jesus a lot. They respect his value system. So we're just looking at his life and then what we're experiencing today as Americans and finding there's a lot of commonality there. And there are things that we can learn from the way that he lived that will help us with a lot of the challenges we're going through right now.
The portrayal and the use of language that you use, today's language, really is quite riveting. I know the goal is to draw people into conversations about Christ, but some Christians may have a problem with the idea of fixing Jesus's brand, if you will. I know you had partners in the Southern Baptists who backed out of the initiative saying it was too broad. Others have described this as a woke Jesus movement. Jason, how do you respond to all of that?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is just increase the respect and the personal relevance of Jesus. And if you talk to skeptics today, that's really the first hurdle that they have to get over on a faith journey. And so, we're not going to be able to do everything in a 30-second or 60-second ad that you just showed. But if we can start a conversation, we don't believe the Jesus brand needs any rehabilitation at all. His brand is amazing. It's actually our brand, my brand. Because we're just imperfect followers of a very perfect example. And so we're trying to put the focus back on Jesus as an example for all of us to live by.
So not a watered down version of Jesus or watered down version of affirming Christianity, if you will?
Not at all. The point is to just start a conversation. And so, my parents were missionaries in the Central African Republic. They were there from the 1930s to the 1960s. And what I learned from them as missionaries is when you're addressing a people group, you learn their language, you contextualize your message for them, you live like that, you understand them, and then you make Jesus relevant in that moment. And that's really what we're trying to do here. And then hopefully that'll start a conversation with a Jesus follower next to them, and they can take it from there. But the ad is just meant to be a spark.
Jason, I got a two-part question for you. I understand the campaign is about to enter a new phase. If you can tell us about that goal, but also real quickly, if we can squeeze it in, Jesus in Matthew talked about every good tree bearing good fruit. Is there a positive story you can share about some of the conversations that have started or new converts?
I mean, one of them is we run some advertising during baseball games, Major League Park. I think this one was at St. Louis Cardinals game, and it says Jesus forgave errors. And so we had somebody write in and say, I made a critical mistake that at work. It cost me my job. My life started to unravel, started costing me my personal relationships. He was clear. He saw his life coming to an end. And he said, I turn on the Cardinals game, and here's this message. Jesus forgives errors. He forgave my mistake, and there's new life in him. And so we get stuff like that all the time. I think what we're most excited about is getting ready for the Super Bowl. And so, Jesus is going to be a really big part of the Super Bowl this year. We have two ads that'll be running. And so we just want to get Christians ready so they can have great conversations.
Jason, unfortunately, we are out of time. I will mention real quickly, as a Cardinals fan, being from St. Louis, I do appreciate that story. Jason Vanderground, thank you so much for giving our audience, and more importantly, those who don't yet know who Jesus is, something important to consider tonight. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, John.
Coming up, no longer the stuff of science fiction, the debate over killer robots and the use of deadly force in dangerous law enforcement scenarios. Welcome back. Tonight, Russian President Vladimir Putin is suggesting the possibility of more prisoner swaps. His statement comes after Brittany Griner landed safely back in the United States, concluding 10 months in Russian detention for drug charges. Griner was traded in an exchange for a notorious international arms dealer, Russian national Viktor Bout. The swap ends months of behind-the-scenes high-level negotiations between Washington and Moscow. State media reporting Putin hinted other prisoners could be swapped, saying, quote, everything is possible, and that Moscow isn't refusing to continue this work in the future. News of Griner's release sparked both praise and condemnation. Still, another high-profile American remains jailed. Paul Whelan, a Michigan corporate security executive, has been imprisoned in Russia since 2018 on espionage charges his family and the United States government say are unfounded. Well, the triple-demic is sparking new concerns about drug shortages heading into winter. U.S. health experts say cases of the flu and COVID are on the rise in some places across the country, causing some popular medications and over-the-counter pain relievers to run low, impacting children the most. Today, the White House held a virtual town hall stressing the importance of COVID vaccines this winter.
Which is why the most important thing you can do to prepare for your holidays is to get your updated COVID vaccine. And if you get it now, you'll be protected in time for winter holiday gatherings.
The First Lady sounding like she's struggling with a cold there. All but 6 states are experiencing high or very high respiratory virus levels. Influenza has also reemerged, while ongoing COVID infections are also leading to more hospitalizations. Acute shortages of children's medicines like liquid acetaminophen and ibuprofen are also being reported. Record levels of illnesses have also spiked demand for the antibiotic amoxicillin, widely used to treat infections. Well, controversy over the role of technology in law enforcement forced city officials in San Francisco to put on hold a policy that would allow police to use robots for deadly force. As CBN's Brody Carter reports, the halted plan comes after fierce pushback and protest.
Killer robots are no longer just science fiction. Defense technologies like this robot equipped with a tactical rifle, produced by Ghost Robotics, show just how far technology has come. In San Francisco, police want to use lethal technology in the field. And while the department says it has no plans to use robots with guns, it wants to use robots equipped with explosives.
We have it as a tool in the event that we do have time, that we don't have to go in and stop the threat immediately, that we have secured the scene, and we weigh out, do we want to risk lives and the public by getting ourselves exposed to the suspect, or can we send a robot in to deal with it?
Definitely either 11 eyes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
San Francisco supervisors approved a measure last week to use robots with deadly force.
Defund the police! Defund the police!
1 week later, amid public outcry, the controversial policy was removed from a larger ordinance aimed at police funding. Some San Francisco officials wanted to go ahead with allowing robots to use deadly force in certain cases. They argued nothing had really changed, so there was no need to reverse the policy. But the vote, including the ban on lethal robots, passed unanimously.
But at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, do we want the San Francisco Police Department to be able to use military-grade weapons through a robot armed with a bomb to blow things up? And the answer to that is no.
It's believed the first time police used a robot to kill an armed suspect was in Dallas, 2016, after a 45-minute shootout with police killed 5 officers. SWAT was given the green light to send in a robot armed with C4 explosives. And in San Francisco today, police can still use robots to check out potentially dangerous scenes so that officers can stay back. Though robot technology for law enforcement has become more widely available, police across the country rarely deploy deadly robots to kill or confront suspects. But the technology is moving ahead fast. And pretty soon, police departments nationwide, possibly in your area, could be wrestling with the ethical implications of using robots to stop crime. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Welcome back. The sprint to fill up stocking stuffers and find the perfect gift to place under the tree shows just how the spirit of Christmas often is overshadowed by commercialism, diminishing the profoundness of Christ's birth. My co-host Jenna Browder explains how noted Christian author Dr. David Jeremiah is bringing attention back to the true reason for the season.
Why the Nativity? That's the name of the new docudrama playing at the Museum of the Bible. It's a journey back in time that answers some of the biggest questions surrounding the birth of Christ.
Just when people needed hope, God would send a baby, a king, to offer a foretaste of a better future.
Brought to life by Dr. David Jeremiah and his Turning Point Studios production company. The film tells the story of the Nativity, pulling from both the Old and New Testaments.
It's a story that's just begging to be shown, and obviously there's no way you can show it and have it be everything it should be, but we came close. I'm really excited about it.
Jeremiah spoke with CBN News at the Museum of the Bible, where the film is now playing through the first part of January. Logan Polson plays Joseph.
We all wish we could be a part of something big, right? We all want to be a part of something big. We don't really think about God's plan, and it's just it's a blessing to be here.
Rosanaya takes the role of Mary, mother of Jesus.
I'm very grateful for this process, for the people, and the story in its own was just so special.
Choir, the word of
In a script narrated by Jeremiah, he answers a host of questions, including why the Virgin Mary, why a carpenter named Joseph, why poor shepherds and wealthy kings bowing down to worship a newborn king, and perhaps most importantly, why should we care, and what should the baby in the manger mean to us as we prepare to celebrate Christmas?
This, what I hope they'll learn is the continuity of the story. So many people who've watched it in the early stages have told me this movie puts the story together so that all of the things make sense. The timing of the wise men, the anxiety of Joseph during the period when he didn't know what was going on.
And the film runs about an hour and 20 minutes long and is already a huge hit. To date, close to 5 million people have watched Why the Nativity on YouTube alone. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Well, finally tonight, trading speeding and parking tickets for holiday cheer. Drivers in Kansas this week were caught off guard by a different kind of police patrol. They're known as the Secret Santa Police. Officers from a local department on the lookout to surprise people with a $100 bill.
It makes the citizens feel good. It makes the officers feel good.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That's very nice.
Absolutely. So there you go. There's $100 there. So.
Wow, thank you.
A holiday tradition for over a decade is courtesy of an anonymous donor, a gift the community, including the officers, look forward to every year. You know, I think I would have been a little more joyful if I got that $100 bill. What a nice way to start the holiday season. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a great weekend.